Bye-bye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Battle Royale night on the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. That fine-looking gentleman is Trey Reeves. I'm Mitch Mason. Part 2 of our ACC preview. We went through the roulette wheel, spin at your own risk, bet what you're able in episode 1 that dropped on Monday morning. Would highly encourage you to go check that out if you have not already. But Trey, tonight we are talking about those teams in the middle that truly could do just about anything. We could drop tilted towers, we could get a blue pump shotgun, and we could go on an absolute tear. Or we could drop in the corner of the map, we could sit in a bush and kind of see what happens. That's basically how I figure this meaty middle of the conference is going to turn out. And as much frustration and back and forth and pondering as I think you and I both had as we were doing our research and putting notes together, I am very excited to see which side of bowl eligibility, quite honestly, you come down on with some of these teams.
Likewise, man. I think there's some really cool conversation to be had about some of these teams, some hidden gems that you can find too. If you're looking for some opportunities to dig deep and find some over-unders that maybe the betting public is sleeping on just a little bit. I really like some of these teams. I'm high on a couple of them, especially maybe a little higher than some of our Jimmies and Joes were, as we sometimes find ourselves being. But as we all know, the Jimmies and Joes know ball, and we'll probably find ourselves on the wrong end of it when compared to them at the end of the year.
Yeah, I feel like normally there's like a team or two that you would probably reorganize, but generally the flow is kind of as I would have thought coming into prep. Not with the ACC. This is a jumbled conference. Just about every team, it feels like, could go 8-4 at somebody else's expense, and I think conference play is going to be a whole lot of fun to watch throughout the season. Let's start tonight's episode with NC State. The Wolfpack kick us off. And, you know, we've been very high on NC State at different times, right? Dave Doran gets the juices flowing. He gets the boys ready to play. There's a lot of really fun, talented pieces. And it felt like last year was their window, man. Grayson McCall comes in. You feel like you've got a lot of veterans out wide. The defense feels good. The pass rush is good. And then Grayson McCall gets 2 concussions very early on, has to medically retire from football. It all falls apart. The turnovers are bountiful. And then you lose guys like KC Concepcion in the portal. And now I'm quite frankly left wondering where NC State kind of exists in the ACC ecosystem. You wrote the preview. Where did you kind of start with deciphering the Wolfpack?
Well, I started with CJ Bailey because out of the ashes, literally, of Grayson McCall's career, he emerged as a true freshman and had a really nice season. Became a guy that they could really rely on by the end of that year. He's back for more this year. And I think if you're building an offense, I think you could certainly do worse than what we saw out of CJ Bailey last year. Don't know if he's necessarily ready to be the dynamic game-breaking quarterback that gets NC State into championship contention like we thought we'd seen in the past with Grayson McCall, with guys like Devin Leary, several other guys throughout the years that we've really banked on. But he's going to be serviceable, and I think he's going to take the next step towards maybe getting there for a junior year if he sticks around with the Wolfpack. Little worried about his talent around him. They're young at running back. Hollywood Smothers had a nice freshman year with 6.4 yards per carry. DeAndre Desmer is a guy that they're really excited about. Dessner, excuse me, is a guy they're really excited about. He's a redshirt freshman that's coming in. Really talented kid coming out of high school that they're excited about. Justin Jolly was kind of the best player on that side of the ball last year, at least from a skill position standpoint. The tight end, he was their leading receiver. He's back this year. They've got Noah Rogers back this season as well. He was a former top 40 recruit that went to Ohio State. Hasn't really flashed yet at NC State, but the talent's in there somewhere, and I think that they're hoping that he can get it out. And then they've got a young kid, a young speedster, 5'9" guy, redshirt freshman, Jonathan Paylor, who got a little bit of action this year, but I think is going to try to fill that Casey Concepcion role, that smaller, shiftier guy that they can kind of move around the formation. So there's some interesting pieces building around CJ Bailey, but they do all have to come together and kind of find some cohesion really quickly for this to be a more successful year this year.
Yeah, I've gotten my notes that, Bailey's next step is cutting down on the turnovers, right? 10 interceptions thrown in not a full season of action. And then, they've got to find who that X factor is going to be. Justin Jolly is great, but very, very rare unless you're like Penn State or Bowling Green when a tight end kind of takes you to championship contention, right? So Noah Rogers, you mentioned, Wesley Grimes comes back as well. Got to have some flash at the wide receiver spot in Concepcion's absence. On the defensive side, they've got to improve their pass rush. That was the biggest thing that I noted. It's a very young defense, especially in the secondary. They just had 23 sacks, which is better than some of their conference mates last year in sack production. But still, especially when you've got some new faces, some young faces on that back end on islands, boy, getting to the quarterback is certainly their best friend. One more note on the offense. I wrote it down and forgot to mention. Kurt Roper takes over the offense. Robert and I was kind of unceremoniously fired after a very frustrating year. I don't necessarily know that it was all on him, but that's kind of same song, different verse. We've seen this happen with an eye before. He's had his ups, he's had his downs, and he's obviously no longer a part of the Wolfpack. So over to the defense, pass rush, young secondary. Is there anything that stands out to you positively about that side of the ball?
Yeah, they got a couple interesting guys along the D-line back, Brandon Cleveland, Trevarley Price. They also brought in Joseph Adedire, I think is how you say his last name, from Texas Tech, guy that was out last year, but he flashed in his first couple of years. Kyan Stone was a force off the edge at Utah State as well. That's a big addition out of the portal. And they've got a really experienced linebacking core. Sean Brown and Caden Fordham, very experienced, very good in stopping the run last year. Really, though, the surprising thing was the defense was just kind of bad across the board last year. It's not something that we're used to seeing from Dave Doran. 30.2 points per game, 4.8 yards per carry on the ground. Like you mentioned, only 23 sacks. They really weren't doing good rushing the passer or defending the pass in the back end. So they brought in some guys to try to fix that. I mentioned Stone on the coming off the edge from Utah State. They brought in a couple guys from lower levels, Jamal Johnson from Temple, J.J. Johnson from Georgia State, to try to fix the secondary after losing 4 of their 5 starters from last year. But my thing, anytime it's lower level guys and not guys that have experience at the Power 5 level, I'm a little concerned about that. So that's the thing I'm watching on that side of the ball. Can those guys step up and play power conference football? We've seen that occasionally in the ACC, and I think the ACC is probably the easiest one to make that jump from the G5 level, but it's certainly something that they've got to fix if they want to find any consistency in the win-loss column this year.
Schedule's brutal. No favors done by the scheduling committee this year. They have to go to Duke. They travel to Notre Dame. They travel to Pitt in back-to-back weeks wrapped around a bye. They host Georgia Tech. They travel to Miami. They host Florida State. They end with North Carolina, and then their first conference game is Virginia. So a lot of teams that have some really good things, some very tough road trips in there. I wrote that I could see anything from 5-7 to 8-4, depending on how this team gels. It's kind of a wide swath of options there. I've been very public that I'm picking East Carolina, for better or for worse, to march in to Carter Finley and win that game in week 1. So, I can get them to a bowl kind of as the floor as long as they win that game. But boy, if they don't, I think we're starting to really worried about where those 6 victories are coming from.
Yeah, just one thing, that Virginia game is a non-conference game. So weird scheduling quirk, but they scheduled a home and home because they felt like they weren't playing each other often enough. So they will get to play them as a non-conference game. But Yeah, other than that, I think you're spot on. It's really, and this could be said about pretty much everybody that we're going to talk about tonight. It's going to come down to how they perform against other teams in their tier, right? That Virginia game is going to be huge, even though it's not a conference game. Going to Wake Forest, hosting Virginia Tech, those types of games, if they can rack up the wins, that's how they're going to get above that 6-6 mark and give themselves a little bit of breathing room. But yeah, I just feel like they're a little bit below that tier of teams that you rattled off, right? I don't see them going into Miami and winning. I certainly don't see them going to South Bend and winning a game. I think Pitt is in a better place than they are right now, and they have them on the road. So it's difficult to paint the picture of them getting above anything in the 7-5, 8-4 range. But if they can find a way to win all those swing games, they're going to give themselves some breathing room. And I think they have more going for them than some of those other teams in this tier. I think I would pick Bailey over Kyron Jones right now, especially as a passer. I think that you look at what Virginia is bringing back and how many questions they have. I think I'm going to pick them in that game, especially at home. So they have a lot going for them. If they can just avoid a season opening loss against ECU, that would be huge, not just for the morale, but also for making a bowl game. But yeah, I think that this is a team that has enough going for it that they can win more of those same tier games than they lose. I think that's what we shoot for this year with NC State.
Yeah, it felt like they had a lot of momentum coming into last season. It all kind of leaks out of the balloon, and now I want to see them get back to that place. I want to see them rebuild and get to a fun place of consistency. I think the Wolfpack's a fun football brand when they're all clicking. Speaking of fun football brands that play tough schedules, the next team on our list is getting the wrath of the ACC. This schedule is disgusting. We're talking about the Syracuse Orange. Fran Brown worked what felt like a little bit of a miracle last year. That team went 10-3. They were fun as heck to watch. At home, on the road, it was truly an entertaining bout. They end Miami's season at the very end of that schedule and really explosive fashion, keep them out of the college football playoff. But they are replacing a ton of production this year. And it feels like a combination of the production, trying to find new faces, very talented faces, as Brown continues to recruit at a high level, but getting new guys kind of installed in that system, plus one of the hardest schedules in the country. Man, it's going to make Syracuse a very fascinating watch this year.
Yeah, just starting with that production that they're losing. The leading FBS passer last year in Kyle McCord, LaQuinn Allen, who had over 1,000 yards rushing. The top 3 receiving options are gone. So there's a lot to figure out on the offensive side of the ball. How do you feel about Steve Angeli? Because I'm kind of high on this guy. I think he flashed a little bit at Notre Dame last year, but certainly not the caliber of transfer, I guess, that Kyle McCord was when he came over. But I guess just really quickly throwing it back to you, do you have any strong Steve Angeli thoughts? Because I think that kind of frames the rest of the offense for me.
Yeah, I think the offense, in theory, could look very similar to what it did last year. Like schematically, I think Air Raid Angeli steps in and can do all the things on paper that Kyle McCord did with that offense. So there's that conformity, right? Where in continuity, where you're not going from like Jacksonville State running it 70 times a game to now we're going to air it out with Gavin Wimsatt for some reason. You've got a similar track that the offense can operate off of. So that certainly is going for them. I think Steve's fine. I think, had he been forced to be the starter or elected the starter at Notre Dame, I think the Irish would have been a winning football team. But it is interesting seeing him now go to the Dome and, kind of pick up where Kyle McCord left off.
Yeah, I think that I don't think he's going to he's not going to lead the FBS in passing, right?
No,
but I think that he can put up numbers. I think he can drive this bus on offense. I'm a little worried about the supporting cast. You've got, like I mentioned, LaQuinn Allen gone, replacing him with Yasny Willis. He's a true freshman last year, so adjusting to college football, but only 3.6 yards per carry. You'd like to see a little bit more burst and a little bit more wiggle to get confidence there. The top 3 receiving options are gone. Daryl Gill was kind of a big play specialist last year. I think he averaged over 20 yards per catch, but they also brought in Jonte Cook. Never really got a firm connection with Quinn Ewers, but the talent is certainly there. Coming up from Texas, Justin Ross Simmons is going to get a full season. He missed the first half of last year with an injury, so maybe getting some more consistency there. But there's a lot of questions around that supporting cast, and hopefully Angeli can kind of be a rising tide that lifts all ships type of situation.
That would be the best case scenario for the Orange, to have a quarterback that just makes everybody around him better. I think that's best case for Fran Brown and company, because there's a lot of unknown. I mean, Jonte Cook, like the ceiling is the roof with him as far as talent goes and potential goes. Dude's just got to stay out of his own way and stay on the field, right? I mean, he was at Washington I don't even know that he ordered the cup of coffee before he was thrown off the team in Seattle. So it's going to be a fun watch, and I'm rooting for Fran Brown because I think the brand is a lot of fun, and having Syracuse not just be kind of the token, like, oh, you don't want to go to the Dome to play because you might lose, but having them be a legitimate threat in the ACC, I think is amazing for that conference, amazing for college football. Flip it over to the defensive side as well. They lost a lot of guys on the defensive line specifically. They had to turn to the portal to beef up that interior. They lose a guy to Texas and so on and so forth. They've got the secondary is full of experienced guys, dudes that you've probably heard their name, like Deuce Chestnut, been around for a minute, transferred to LSU, started at Syracuse, transferred to LSU. He's back. This is his second season since coming back. And they finished 82nd in the country, so they were fine. They were average, literally average. I wonder if they can push towards being more of that top half. If they can get inside the top 70, I start to feel a lot better about that defense. But brother, questions on offense, not like just feeling amazing about defense and going, these are my stalwarts. These are the guys that are getting those stops in the red zone every single time. These are the bend but don't break pieces. Plus the schedule, man, it gets tricky very quick to get Syracuse to a bowl game.
Yeah, you said it. On the defense real quick, I actually do feel pretty good about the front seven. They had to churn through a lot of guys last year because of injuries, so that's kind of a blessing for this year. They have 7 defensive linemen actually on the squad that started at least one game for them last year. So got a little bit of experience, got to kind of get trial by fire last year. I like their linebackers as well. Gary Bryant from South Dakota, he had over 100 tackles last year. You got Derek McDonald back as well, but you mentioned the secondary. Corner is a big concern. And especially when you look at that schedule that they're going to face, they're going to play a Tennessee team right off the bat that is going to want to air it out. I don't know if Tennessee is going to be able to air it out, but Syracuse might not have the corners to keep up with SEC wide receivers. Then you just go down the list, man, and it's a who's who of contenders in this conference. They go to Clemson, SMU, Georgia Tech, Miami, and Notre Dame for good measure. Let's just throw a game at the Fighting Irish in there. And then if you're looking for maybe some reprieve on the home schedule, they host Duke, Pitt, North Carolina, and Boston College. So I just wrote my word. That doesn't even count a UConn team that won 9 games that they get at home this year as well. So it's according to Phil Steele, it's the 5th hardest schedule in the entire country. I would love to see who has the 4 teams that have tougher schedules than Syracuse, because I bet they're playing in the SEC, and I bet they're also playing a big Power 5 opponent.
Yeah, it's there's no on-ramp to the season, especially not playing Tennessee and then UConn as their home opener. I will say this, though. Last episode, I talked about Boston College picking off SMU, and Syracuse is in a similar boat where I really like a lot of the talent on this team. I adore Fran Brown. I have bought in. I believe that he's got this program trending in the right direction. Was not one of the first ones on the boat last year. I really wanted to see what he did at a program that, at least since the Big East days, has struggled to be championship relevant in college football. And he turned them into a 10-win program. And so I certainly see the vision, and I see a path forward for Syracuse. And because of that, they're one of the teams that I try and pick off an upset when I look down the schedule. And I'll tell you, Tennessee out of the gate, we just don't know what their offense is actually going to look like, right? Like, I've got my doubts about so many layers for the Volunteers. We talked about that in our SEC preview. If I had to go on record, I think Syracuse might win the opener in Atlanta over Tennessee.
Boy, you talk about a game that, if that is a result that could shift the perceptions of not just those two programs this season, but the entire SEC. Like, what do we do with a win over Tennessee the rest of the year for a team in the SEC if they're a team that lost to Syracuse, who then goes on to struggle in the ACC? What do we think about Syracuse as being a potential massive wrench in the wheels of an ACC title contender if they can knock off the big bad SEC team in Tennessee? That would be absolutely massive, and something that I don't think anybody is considering across the college football space right now.
Well, maybe they should be, because again, it's possible. Through Fran Brown, I think Syracuse can reach new heights and a new level of consistency. So, man, if you're looking for a team to tune into on a week-to-week basis and just watch some probably pretty good football, I think Syracuse is one of those top contenders to throw in the old YouTube TV quad box. Another team that I think is flying under the radar, mostly because of how they ended last season, Trey, the Pitt Panthers. Panthers were 7-0. This felt like the average golf round, right? When we're out there playing on some muni, really good going out, you make it to the turn, you're feeling good, and then you just collapse down the back nine. That was Pitt. 7-0 going out. They have all these injuries, including to Eli Holstein, and they go 0-6 coming home, including a just gut-wrenching bowl loss to Toledo. It felt like Pitt rose in prominence, and folks were starting to believe in Pat Narduzzi, and oh my gosh, Pitt might be an ACC contender, might be a relevant for the playoff this year. And then because of the way they collapsed, I just quite frankly haven't heard a lot of noise nationally about them this season, but they return a lot of their production on offense, and there's some really nice pieces. I think in the front seven of this defense that give me hope that Pitt could certainly be dangerous.
Remind me, I need to make a hot dog at the turn joke when we get to the schedule if I forget. But you're right. I'm high on Pitt this year. I think that the 7-0 start last year certainly showed what they're capable of. And they bring a lot of those pieces back this year. You mentioned Eli Holstein. I think he is going to take a step this year towards being one of the top quarterbacks in the ACC. I don't know if that's top 3. I don't know if it's top 5, but he flashed a lot last year. It's a talented kid. He can do it with his arm and his legs. They bring back Desmond Reed, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last year and also added almost 600 yards through the air. That is one of the most underrated players in all of college football, a two-way back. And I think my only concern on the offensive side of the ball is maybe just the depth at receiver. They're losing some of their top guys, losing their top receiver from last year, but Kenny Johnson and Raphael Williams had some nice moments last year. We got to see if they can step up. If they can kind of take the next step into being the dudes in that room, then I think I'm fine with the receiving core. And my only remaining concern is just if injury luck kind of evens out on the offensive line, because everyone wants to talk about Eli Holstein's injury. There was also injuries on the offensive line that really derailed that season down the stretch last year and made it just almost impossible for them to get anything going on the offensive side of the ball toward down the stretch. So yeah, it's a really fun offense. They brought in a new offensive coordinator last year that was one of the youngest, Cade Bell, one of the youngest in all of FBS. And we kind of highlighted that jokingly, saying, Pat Narduzzi's kind of rethinking his strategy, right? And it turned out to be really fun.
It worked.
Really exciting, and it worked. So I'm excited to see year 2 of that system too, and just how Pitt's able to really capitalize on another year in that system and being a fun offensive team. It's just something still so new for Pitt that we're still having to get used to.
Yeah. Bell came over from Western Carolina, where he ran the air raid. Pitt had a top 25 passing offense last year, and that was really off of half a season worth of consistent production, right? You look down that back half of the schedule where they lost every game. They got blown out at SMU. That was the train was off the tracks very early in Dallas. But then they hold Virginia to 24. They hold Clemson the next week to 24. They got boat raced by Louisville. They held Boston College to 24. And then just in a truly wheels off 6 overtime game above Sports Bowl, lose to Toledo. That, I mean, we were driving back from Des Moines and I had that on my phone. And I mean, you talk about entertainment to pass the hours of cornfields and rolling Kansas hills. Game Above Sports Bowl did that for me. So, shout out to Toledo and Pitt for that. The defense, the passing defense scares me a little bit. They were kind of a quarterback's wildest dream last year, 122nd in the country. You could throw on the Pitt Panthers. Can they improve on that? Can they improve on the mark of nearly 30 points per game averaged out across the entire season, right? And like I read through a number of those losses, it wasn't necessarily week to week. They were giving up almost 30 points, but they did have a game or two where they got boat raced. So finding that consistency, I think they've got some nice pieces at linebacker, soul of the defense. I like the front four as well. Talk to me about the schedule, because the schedule has I think a relatively soft opening. Duquesne and Central Michigan, you should be able to take care of no problem. West Virginia, at West Virginia, in the backyard brawl will be fascinating to watch, and a great rivalry game there. And then you've got Louisville and Boston College to open conference play. Could be a tricky spot to get some momentum going in the ACC, but at the same time, if you pass those tests, I think Pat Narduzzi and the boys start feeling themselves.
That's the hot dog at the turn joke, because that's the turn, right? At Florida State, at Syracuse, back-to-back weeks. And if it's a nice quality dog at the turn in the clubhouse, then we're good. We're firing all cylinders on the back nine, right? Maybe we're birdieing number 10 and really feeling off to the races.
Sure.
If it's a low quality Walmart dog that's odds and ends and it just upsets your stomach, you're running for the outhouse at the 12th hole. And so I really do think, to make this analogy just go even further, those two games are the key on the schedule for me, because you go to West Virginia. They lost the last time they were in Morgantown, but that's a team that's rebuilding. Don't know if they're going to be quite ready to knock off Pitt yet in game 3 under Rich Rod. Host Louisville and Boston College. I think I would pick Pitt in both of those games right now. I know I'm high on Louisville, but that's in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So I think Louisville has more unknowns. We'll talk more about that, but I think Louisville might have more unknowns on offense going into this year than Pitt does. And if they can get past Louisville, then they're going to go into that stretch, that turn, at 5-0 most likely. And then if it's a good hot dog at the turn and you're 7-0, I mean, right after that, it's NC State at home and at Stanford. So there's a real possibility, if they're firing all cylinders in those two road games, we could be talking about an 8 or 9-0 Pitt. I don't think that's remotely out of the question. I'm getting 2 or 3 steps ahead of myself, but yeah, you gave me the hot dog analogy. It was low-hanging fruit. And if we're getting a Costco dog at the turn, sure, sign me up, and we're going to be talking about 8 or 9-0 Pitt going into a big stretch where they're playing for something really huge.
My last golf trip with the boys, we started by going to get lunch at Costco as we loaded up on some essential supplies. And you know what? I'd credit the Costco dog to my best tournament performance to date. Played some really, really good golf. So if it worked for me, it can work for Pitt. I don't know if there are Costco's up in the Pittsburgh area, but boy, they might need to ship some in if not, to get those vibes going. It's funny. I have 9-3. I think is my absolute ceiling. I'm probably not as high on Pitt as you are. But if they can knock off Miami at home, beat Syracuse on the road, it starts to get fun, 9-3, and maybe beyond that pretty fast.
Absolutely. And I think they've got the 2 most important positions figured out. I'm really high on Eli Holstein. Didn't get to mention it, but the pass rush might be the best in the conference. They had 41 sacks last year, and they bring back, I think, their top 4 guys from a stack standpoint. It's not just one guy that was leading the way last year. It was really spread out. So, yeah, this is a team I'm really high on, and I'll go to bat for him here in preview season.
Love it. Love it. Pitt Panther fans, get on board our hype train. Come join us over here at the 3 Tech Pod. Glad to have you if you're discovering us through this YouTube video or through this clip on your podcasting feed. Welcome. We're very excited to watch Pitt football this year. Let's move to the Duke Blue Devils, a team that you and I are high on this year. I will eat some crow and say last year my preview was very discouraging towards Duke. I did not expect the guys that were returning to step up the way they did. And specifically, I called out the pass rush. I did not know if Duke's front seven was actually going to be able to produce the results that a Manny Diaz-led team needs to win. And they put me in my place pretty quickly. 9-4 last year. Malik Murphy came in, did some nice things, turned the ball over a lot, and was a little bit inefficient with that offense, but gets Duke to 9 wins. And now this year, Trey, they've got a quarterback that is much more efficient, that takes care of the football certainly better than Malik Murphy. And they had to go out and spin for him to get Darian Mensah from Tulane. It feels like all vibes up there for the Dukies right now.
Yeah, they spent basketball type money on Darian Mensah, and they upgraded that room. Like Malik Murphy, like you said, was fine last year. He had some nice moments, turned the ball over a lot, like you said. But Darian Mensah is a potentially great quarterback, potentially coming in right now preseason as maybe the second or third best quarterback in the entire ACC when you stack them all up against each other. So yeah, I'm really high on him. Supporting cast is really interesting to me. They lost Star Thomas. He's going off to Tennessee, but I'm interested in Peyton Jones. This is a guy that was injured for a good chunk of last season, never really got going. I think he was supposed to be a senior season, but he got a medical red shirt to come back. He's healthy now. But that's a guy that led their offense in rushing, led their backs in rushing, I should say. They had Riley Leonard lead the offense in rushing a few years ago, but he's back, very experienced. Jaquez Moore is back as well too.
Mm-hmm.
And the pass catchers, they're going to need Quayshawn Brown and Shamir Hagans to step up, kind of similar to what I was talking about with Pitt, guys that have been in the room but haven't been the guy needing to step up. They also went and got a really interesting addition in Cooper Burkhardt, I think is how you say his last name, from Harvard. Yeah, over 1,000 yards in the slot last year at Harvard. So interesting receiving portal. I like Landon King as a tight end from Utah as well. Also spent time at Auburn. And the offensive line has 4 starters back. And they only allowed 12 sacks all of last year. So this is an offense that I think you can buy some stock in. They really weren't good on offense last year. Like I mentioned, Malik Murphy made some plays and just kind of pulled some magic out of his hat at times. He also forced a lot of balls, like we mentioned, but they couldn't run the ball. They really didn't have a ton that they were working with as far as receivers went, but yeah, it didn't translate to a lot of points. They were winning games with defense more last year. So I think this offense can step up and lead the team this year. And that's going to be something that Duke kind of got a taste of, I guess, under Mike Elko, but it was really more of a defensive led team then as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they adjust to maybe an offensive minded team this year.
Yeah, you talk about a fully weaponized Duke offense. If they can run the ball, if they can get Mensah some support to balance out that attack, and then, they get some wide receivers to step up. Boy, it gets fun in a hurry, man. You mentioned they've got to run the ball better. 127th in the country last year. They were awful at moving the chains on the ground. So that certainly has to improve. But to the point that I led off this segment with, they led the ACC in sacks, forced fumbles, and fumble recoveries last year. This was a defensive line that I was naysaying. I was telling you, sell Duke stock in year one. That, boy, what a terrible miss for my takes department there. Wesley Williams and Vincent Anthony Jr. are both back this year. They combined for over 70 tackles last year from the defensive line, and a third of those were tackles for loss. I mean, just incredible levels of production in the trenches, winning the line of scrimmage. And I think that's got to continue for Duke this year. Secondary, I think, should be a top 50 unit. That would take a little bit of improvement, but guys like Chandler Rivers are back at corner. They've got Terry Moore, who's back at safety. I just like this defense. And, Manny Diaz is in his element, coaching this side of the ball. So I'm kind of all in on Duke, man. I don't know where you net out with their schedule. I'll throw this out there. I've got Duke winning 10 games this year. I think they go 10-2, and maybe that's a spicy take. I don't know. Maybe I'm drinking the Duke Blue Kool-Aid, but I'm all in on the Blue Devils this year.
I love it. I thought I was high on Duke, and I was going to have to pull you up with me, but
nope.
No, man, that's awesome. I'm not quite to 10-2. Thought I was high on Duke. I guess I'm not.
Fair enough. Losses to Georgia Tech and Clemson.
Okay, fair enough. One cause for pause, I will say. 6-1 in 1-score games last year. So
that's going to continue.
We think that's going to continue. All right. Well, but you think about it, and they were in so many one-score games because their defense was working their tails off, creating havoc all over the field, and the offense just did nothing with it. They were +8 in turnover margin last year, even though Malik Murphy, I'm trying to find the exact number.
13 picks, is that right?
I think 12. I have 12.
12. Okay.
Could be off by one. That's totally
he was 13th or 14th in the conference in passing. That's what it was. So did not really move the needle offensively for them is the point.
Yeah, and they still found a way to be +8 in turnover margin. Some of that was because of SMU giving them 6. But you look at 6-1 in one-score games. My point on that was I think that's with an offense that was providing essentially nothing. Right. Mm-hmm. So you get all these offensive upgrades. You think you're going to be better with Darian Menza. That's going to lead to fewer close games. Can't probably expect winning 6 out of 7, but I don't think they'll be in 7 this year. My bold take on Duke before you said they were 10-2, I thought I was going to be bold by saying they're going to start 6-0. I think that Illinois game is really interesting at home. That is a massive game for both of those programs. It's a massive trajectory setting game for both of those programs. They go to Tulane the following week in a Darian Menza revenge game. So we'll see how that works out. If there's a motivation there, that is certainly looking trickier with Jake Retzlaff playing quarterback for Tulane now. But I see no reason why they can't start 6-0. Back-to-back road games against Syracuse in California. NC State's always going to be a tough out in a in-state rivalry game. But if they're starting 6-0, the back half's tougher, but that run towards 9 or 10 wins is looking way more possible.
I think I've got them losing, like I said, home against Georgia Tech, a Yellow Jackets team that I'm very high on, and then losing to Clemson, who I think is a national title contender, and that's in Death Valley. I don't know that anybody is going to go to Clemson and knock off Dabo's squad. But yeah, I'm with you on 6-0. No doubt about it. Is the Darian Menza game against Tulane, is that a revenge game, or is that I'm with someone younger and richer and better looking than you? Because that's what that feels like to me.
Revenge games can mean so much, you know.
I think it's a revenge game for Tulane.
I think it's a revenge game for Tulane. Yeah, exactly. It's a revenge spot for Tulane. Playing against a guy that thought that he was too good for you, essentially, and that he's in a better spot. But revenge spot for Tulane, essentially, and going to New Orleans will be difficult. That'll be a fired up crowd as well. I'm sure they'll give Menza hell that whole entire game.
I'm sure. Listen, you spend you spend a summer posting pictures at Lake Como with your new boo. Going back and seeing your ex is probably going to be a little bit awkward, but.
It's going back to the homecoming game the following year after you left your girl and both went to separate colleges or something like that. And you both end up at the homecoming game and it's just awkward because you brought your new girlfriend from the big city and it's an awkward situation.
Oh gosh, that's going to be fun. September 13th, if you want to tune in, Duke at Tulane should be a fun one. I'm with you on the Illinois game as well. I don't think enough people around the country are highlighting that game. You watch every single preview show in week 2. We'll go, oh yeah, Duke's hosting Illinois. That's fun. Like throw that on your TV screen. But you heard it here in July. And honestly, a couple months ago when we were talking about the road trip that we planned, we talked about Duke and Illinois. So you've been hearing about that game for a couple of months here on this show. Just another reason. Tune in on a week-to-week basis. Let's wrap up this episode, my friend, with, I think wrapping up this episode with the Louisville Cardinals. You mentioned them earlier. You kind of had a transition to Louisville earlier, decided to save it for now. The Jimmies and the Joes are pretty high on the Cardinals, and I think it's obvious to see why. The offense should be really fun. There's no reason to believe that a Jeff Brom offense isn't going to throw the ball extremely effectively, right? And Louisville went 9-4 last season. They bring in Miller Moss, who did some big things at USC. The turnovers got him, though, and that was ultimately what got him benched at USC. But boy, you look across this offense, and outside of the offensive line, which I have some concerns about, it's not hard to start to fall in love with the points that Louisville could put up.
You're absolutely right. I think my only concern about Louisville and why I said they might have more questions than Pitt is I'm just asking myself, can Jeff Brom keep getting away with this? Because in his first 2 years at Louisville, he's taken straight up cast-offs from other programs. Jack Plummer had some nice moments at Cal, and I know he had the connection with Jeff Brom from their time at Purdue, but turned him into a bona fide all ACC quarterback, and he was running a fantastic offense 2 years ago. Then he takes Tyler Shuck, who could never stay healthy, played sparingly at Oregon and Texas Tech, could never stay on the field, was cast off for Texas Tech for like his 7th year of college football. And once again, Jeff Brom turns him into an all-conference caliber quarterback. And
a first-round NFL pick.
Yeah. Did he get drafted in the first round?
Yes, he went to the Saints.
In the first? That's insane.
I think that was a first round. Hold on. Let me just the comment.
I remember him getting. I'm going to be honest. I tuned out a lot of the NFL draft this year, and I remember him getting hype on draft Twitter because of something he did at the combine.
Early in the second, 40th overall. So not a first round pick. That was Jackson Dart. That was the Giants traded back in to get him, but still early on in the draft was considered, supposedly according to all the NFL draft talking heads, to be in the realm of possibility at going like 15. And then the Saints ended up getting him in the second round. So still, point remains, a guy who literally was, the MASH unit and now is probably the starting quarterback for Kellen Moore's New Orleans Saints. How about that?
Rags to riches, man, courtesy of Jeff Brom. And again, can he keep getting away with this? Because Miller Moss is another cast-off. He's going to try to do it for the 3rd straight year with somebody else's trash and make it his treasure. And I think Miller Moss is really talented. I think that he could do it again. This is a guy that there's a lot of dysfunction out at USC. We highlighted that on our Big Ten preview this year. And Miller Moss seems like kind of a tailor-made guy to be another rags to riches story under Jeff Brom.
Moss might have both the highest floor and the highest ceiling of that trifecta of quarterbacks.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's really fair to say. I think he's going to bring a lot of talent with him. The rest of the offense is fantastic. I have no other questions. The top 3 running backs are back. Isaac Brown ran for almost 1,200 last year.
Yep.
They lost Ja'Cory Brooks, but Chris Bell is back. Colin Lacey, who we thought was going to be the big guy last year before he got hurt. Where he came from somewhere in the Sun Belt, South Alabama.
South Alabama. Yeah,
so he had like 1,400 yards or something ridiculous like that at South Alabama. Came up to Louisville, got hurt, but he's back and finally healthy. And you mentioned being a little bit concerned about the O-line. To me, it's a pretty deep and experienced group. I'm actually pretty okay with what they have there. But
did they not lose a couple of depth pieces to the spring portal? I know they have 3 new starters. And then I thought they lost a couple of guys in the spring portal. Was why I was concerned. Okay.
That's possible. Yeah. I saw a quick look at their offensive line, but yeah, that's very possible. I'll defer to you on that one. But
I think the depth took a hit, plus the 3 new starters was what I had in my notes.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll defer to you on that one. But other than that, then I'm pretty high on the offense, and it's really gonna boil down to is Miller Moss another treasure trove dive that he found from the dumpster.
Yeah, big thrift find potentially for Jeff Brom and company. Talk to me about the defense. They're replacing 8 starters, but the wealth of talent seems to be at the linebacker spot. They've got Stequan Clark comes back. They've got TJ Quinn. They've got TJ Capers. That's not going to throw broadcasters off at all this season. And the defensive line has some experience as well. The secondary is entirely new. Some familiar faces. You've probably heard of Dave McCullough, who started at Indiana, I believe, went to Oklahoma, has kind of been around the block. Now he's at Louisville. So my question for the defense is they've been known for their pass rush, the havoc plays, getting that offense off schedule early on. Do you still see that happening here in 2025, or does the defense have to kind of reinvent itself?
That's a great question, because I think the defensive line is probably going to take a step back. They lost a ton of guys up front. But they did get Clev Lubin, who comes over from Coastal Carolina. He had 9.5 sacks last year for the Shanties. So if he can make the step up to ACC ball, play in the trenches in a power conference, then that answers one of those questions there. You mentioned the linebackers. I think that's going to be the strength of this side of the ball for Louisville. But yeah, the havoc plays from the defensive line are a concern. They were really good at stopping the run last year. I'm a little worried if there's a few more holes up the middle, if that kind of collapses a little bit this year. But yeah, I think far and away the biggest concern is the secondary. They lost their top 3, like you mentioned. Another guy they got, though, is JoJo Evans from FIU. That's a very interesting portal addition. He played really well for the Golden Panthers last year. So it's just replacing the top 3. It's replacing 3 really talented guys from that secondary, and that's always going to be difficult.
FIU fans, I know we've got some of you guys that listen. Pause Up podcast. Shout out to you guys. We know it's the FIU Panthers. I think Golden Panthers might have been an old name, but I'll save you that one. Do you think when you look at this schedule that they can get off to a hot start? Because I wrote in my notes that it's a little bit of a tricky schedule. James Madison, Bowling Green's probably mostly of a reset. I don't know how nervous you are about the Bowling Green offense this year, but then at Pitt, Virginia, and Miami are how you round out that first half of the season. You talk about getting a hot dog at the turn. It feels like Louisville could certainly make some hay down the back half of that schedule. I think Clemson and SMU are the only 2 teams that scare you in the second half, but you've got to collect those wins early, get the momentum going, I feel like, to reach the ceiling of, I've seen 10 wins thrown out as a ceiling for this Louisville team. I don't know I'm quite as high on them as that, but I could get them in that ballpark.
I think I'm fine with 10 as an absolute ceiling, but yeah, I'm a little worried about the start because I'm not sharping in a win against James Madison on a Friday night. That's going to be a Duke's team that's looking for a playoff statement win. And they're a really talented team and a really good program over there at James Madison. So not sharping in a win there. I think that's going to be a dogfight. They won in an ACC stadium last year and put up 70 points on North Carolina. So if you're not ready to play sound defense, they're going to embarrass you. Bowling Green, I think, is going to take a step back. But MAC teams in that top tier do play Power 5 competition pretty close. Bowling Green plays Power 5 competition pretty close historically. And I think that I think I'm going to, like I said, I think I'm going to take Pitt right now in that game in Pittsburgh. So you're looking at potential for a 2-2 start, and that could really start some wheels spinning and cause a lot of questions on especially how we get to that 10-2. If it's the defense busting coverages and they're losing some shootouts, okay, we stay the course. We trust our offense to work it out, and we find something that we can find an identity in on defense. But if Miller Moss is turning the ball over left and right and it's giving the other offenses short fields, then maybe we start to hit the panic button before that bye week going into the Miami week.
I could certainly see it maybe falling apart if they don't get lucky with Miller Moss, if he's turning the ball over left, right, and center and allows defenses to stack the box and try and figure out a way to take away Isaac Brown. I think that is much easier said than done. But at his best, man, Miller Moss, like I said, highest floor, highest ceiling of these quarterbacks that I think Braum has had at Louisville. Cardinals could be a whole lot of fun, man. They could be a whole lot of fun. This offense is, I think, going to be must-see TV. And if the defense can catch up and, just improve on, especially in the secondary, the pass rush can get home, ACC, it's going to have some sneaky teams, some teams that I feel like are missed on the national radar. They're not going to get the SEC and Big Ten coverage. But you look up in November and, yeah, Louisville is 9-3 or going for their 10th win. And, you kind of feel like, wait, how did they get here? What's their story? So hopefully you guys are tuning in to some of these ACC teams. We know we've got a bunch of friends of the program that are preaching ACC as a quality conference, even though I don't think their PR is on the level of the SEC and the Big Ten. But boy, exciting times, exciting middle portion of this conference. 5 teams down in this episode. We've got 5 teams left to go in the Friday episode. A couple of teams that maybe you or I wouldn't have had in that top contenders tier. We'll break all of that down in our next episode. So we hope you will come and join us. For Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until Friday morning, so long, everybody.